Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Event Marketers Toolbox. I am Chris Dunn with Blue Hive Exhibits. Thank you for joining us today. It's Thursday. I think we're in episode number 24. Super excited. It's just Dana and I today. But we're going to do a little recap of the last 6 months worth of shows and I don't know, see what we learned. What we've learned. So my co-host actually over there, is Dana. Dana, who are you and why are you here?
So, Dana Esposito, and I have been in the exhibit industry almost 30 years now. Started off literally as the model builder for the other exhibit designers, but I did go to school for design, and
Mhm.
quickly, within less than a year, started working as an exhibit designer, like on the computer, and worked on everything from rentals to hybrids to new builds. I've as time has gone by, because I kind of have both sides of the brain going, I not only am exhibit design, I've moved into like creative leadership and corporate leadership and strategy, because my brain is always going, what can we do next? What can we do better? And so I'm one of those people who believe in like constant education, like continuous education and continuous improvement. So
Well, it sounds like you're a good person to have with me then. Keep me between the sticks, as it were.
yeah.
No, this is great. Certainly, we're excited for this episode. We'll talk a little bit about our journey, how we started off with the podcast, and kind of how we've gotten to where we are.
I'm not going to
Um,
let you go forward though until you introduce yourself.
I already did introduce myself.
No, but, like, how are you
Oh,
here?
how am I
Like, a
here?
little
You
bit of
know,
background,
a
because we
little bit of
haven't done
background.
this yet.
Yeah, that's very true. I also have 3 decades worth of experience here. I was a design major in school. I started off, got into the sign industry through a friend of a friend back in my hometown. Things in Northeast Massachusetts in the early '90s economically were not great, so went seeking fame and fortune out in Colorado with my girlfriend, who turned into my wife. But out in Colorado, I was in the sign business, and I met a guy who had a business that was half exhibits and half signs. And he introduced me to the exhibit world, and I was blown away. I was like, "Oh my god, I think I know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." Eventually, we moved back to Massachusetts. I worked for the first 10 years in this industry for a smaller kind of portable modular company, and then 20 years ago, I joined this fresh young startup by the name of Blue Hive. Very strange name, with a great backstory. But hey, I've been here for 20 years. Most of those years, probably 15 or so pre-COVID, I was an individual contributor. And then coming out of COVID, I changed positions a little bit, and I do still carry a book of business, but I'm also leading the sales team. And that which has kind of led me into, kind of being a bit of a brand ambassador and kind of this a bit of a spokesperson for Blue Hive.
Mhm.
How's that?
Funny, that's awesome. One of my first memories in the industry is when I went for my interview at the first company I've worked for, because
Yeah,
it's been, I think, over 30 years. I went in the wrong door because at the time they didn't have, like, the signage they have up now, and I went in the
sure.
wrong door, and I
Yeah.
actually walked right into the shop.
Okay.
And so I was hit immediately with that smell of fresh cut sawdust, which
Yeah.
is like the best smell ever. Or at least I've always
You were
loved it growing up around construction. Like, I'm like,
right.
this is
Yeah.
the place
I'm
I
in.
need to be. And so even now, every time I leave my office, I walk on, cut through the shop or go see something's out there, I still get hit
Yeah.
with that smell and I love it. Even though we use so many other materials too, I
Right.
just love that.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a good memory.
this industry is so interesting in that it's a combination of so many different things. As somebody who was involved in design, I specifically was an illustration major, but I loved the design aspect. I loved, building stuff, and I loved kind of architecture. And it was a marriage of all of these things. In 1995, I went to the exhibitor show. At the time, it was at Bally's, and I walked in, and I was like, "Oh my god! Like, this is it, right?" I've died and gone to heaven, and here we are, 30 years
Here we
later.
are.
Not every day is a great day, but the industry is always fun and changing and interesting. So again, welcome. We have a live show here, so feel free to put questions and comments up here, and we'll try to get to everybody's comments. But Dana, I wanted, because we both work for Blue Hive, I wanted you to kind of shine a light on who we are. Like, what's our differentiator? To be honest, sometimes I have a hard time putting putting it into a nice, concise sentence or two,
Mhm.
30-second elevator pitch per se. But you've got a fresh perspective of this. You're newer to our company, so you have alternative lens that you've seen us from the outside and now from the inside. And also, hey, you're also our EVP of strategy, so this is kind of your wheelhouse. Tell us some of the things about Blue Hive that we, maybe are a little bit different than some of the other companies that are out there.
Sure. So first off, we are privately owned, debt free. We are family owned. Company, this is third generation, which is great. Some companies are run by corporations or like a large group, and
Investment
that's
groups.
not the case, right? So this is a lot of passion, a lot of experience, and a lot of weight on those individual shoulders to make sure it's there for their children if they also choose to run it and be involved someday. So there's a lot of care by that family, right?
Mm, yeah.
And now at the helm is Caitlin, who I always tell people she's why I came to work here. I had
Yeah.
already known of her and dealt with her in some other capacities, and I knew she really had her act together, and I valued that. I'm like, oh, she's and so we're women owned and women led, and so she's technically my first like girl boss, and I love it.
She
No
is a girl
offense to
boss
all
on
the
her own too.
dudes, not offense to all the dudes out there. But I'm just saying it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that we're growing, but it's a very slow, organic, healthy growth. It's not
Yeah.
like someone coming in and saying we're going to need to be X million by this date. It's a very healthy. It's like I said, it's organic. It's when it's appropriate and makes sense for both
Hmm.
the company and our clients that we're serving. So our capabilities, like for instance, it was I think almost 2 years ago, we opened our Las Vegas facility, right? So now we have
Right.
East Coast
Yeah.
and West Coast, and some companies they have. And this is no, I'm not striking it on the company. I'm just describing Blue Hive because you asked. So,
Mhm.
some companies will have like satellite offices, and that might be a sales office only, or it might be like just a small warehouse. Where our East Coast and West Coast facilities are both full facilities. So we have
Right.
we have staff, we have fabrication there, and both of them are always
Warehousing, all the
warehousing.
stuff.
So it's all the things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me see what else. Because we're able to do everything ourselves except for like mostly fabric, right? We usually
Yeah.
sub that out to our trusted partners. um, we're able to have a lot of control and project management over the things that we are creating, and our service is excellent. We're known for our customer service, which is hugely important.
Yeah.
And so just having that control without like additional layers, right? Every time you add another person or another partner or company, it's like an opportunity to either things take longer and time is money, or an
Yep.
opportunity for an error to happen, just miscommunication or whatnot. So,
Yep.
and other than that, I really love our diverse um, the staff that we have, the talent that we have. We really have at this point like all the generations under
Yeah.
the
It's
umbrella,
pretty amazing.
and that brings not only an amazing amount of years of experience in the industry, like if you just add it up, like it's hundreds of years of experience in the industry, right?
Might be
But
thousands.
but when you have all the other layers of generation, it keeps everyone really fresh and on the cusp of things that are new with technology. Like we have no choice. We're constantly learning new things, not just to keep up, but also to drive things, to drive trends.
Mhm.
Like I was just you talking to another high level, like creative we have literally came that person came up with some really like new like things that haven't actually been done yet. Like a lot of times we wait, I say we meaning the industry, a lot of trends are created in Europe, like where there's color. A lot of that's driven by the automotive industry and things like that, or the way things are done or systems. And it all filters west. That's very normal,
Mhm.
has kind of always been that way. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also great to know that when you're at a company who isn't afraid to lead things as well.
Yeah.
So I I'd say our people make a huge difference. Our people
Right.
are a part of our differentiating factor.
Yeah, that's really cool. And our friend Chris Griffin, who's the president of the EDPA, and will be a future guest. He's booked now for the end of July, which looking forward to that. but he reminds us all the time that 50% of the people in the industry, maybe a little bit more, are new since COVID. Like COVID, the whole pandemic thing, the shutdown of all event industry. Anybody who's listening to this who's been around for a little while understands that, or maybe you're brand new as well.
Yeah.
But with those 50% being new, obviously that's across the board. That's on the client side, that's on our side, that's on the contractor side, like Freeman, GES, so forth. So, like you said, we've got multi generations. We've got people who have done different things in the past. They come in with different, skill sets and different ideas, and blending all those things together can be challenging. It's much like building, a pro sports team, baseball team. You think of you got to have the veterans and you got to have the rookies as well, because the rookies provide the energy and the veterans provide the know-how.
Yep.
So marrying all that stuff together is super important. So listen, on the toolbox here, we try not to make it a commercial for Blue Hive, so we're going to move on from that. But this is an exciting episode. We've done 23 episodes in the past, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned, trends that we've seen. There's certainly been talking points which multiple guests have kind of hit upon, and you start diving into those. And granted, the conversations can go off in a bunch of different directions, but it was really kind of nice. Our agency, Fist Bump, that actually produces this show, helps not only the production of it, but they're kind of doing the deep dive into the data, right? So they're able to look at all the transcripts, all the video, pull it all together, and hand us a piece of paper, basically. Hey, here's a bunch of notes on exactly, what's going on, who said what. We were able to identify some of those trends. So thank you, Fist Bump. Appreciate that, Juana and Brandon and team. And, thanks for giving us the tools to survive, not just survive, but to thrive, I should say, here on the Toolbox. So we're going to flip the format a little bit right here. And Dana, you're going to kind of interview me, as it were. And I'll babble, no doubt.
Okay. So
Okay.
let's look back a little bit
Mhm.
on some of the topics or themes around goal setting and storytelling and sales enablement.
Yeah. So you know what? I think, I don't know, out of 23 people, probably 15 or 18 had talked about setting goals. Because if you don't start with setting goals, and you're a designer by trade, you know this, and you live it in discovery calls on a daily basis. If you don't start with the proper goals, then you never know. Then you don't have any idea where you're going to end up, because there is no really roadmap, right? So, what do those goals look like? They're everything from, like, what are you trying to achieve at this particular event or trade show? Is it all about gathering leads? Is it about brand recognition? Are we launching a product? Are we here to gain more PR? We have one client, really interestingly enough, they're in the veterinary emergency space, and they're there to attract new doctors. They're not there to make sales. They're there to meet people who are looking for opportunities. So when we think about designing a booth for somebody like that, we flip the script entirely. Because it's not about leads. It's not about, like, well, we got to prove our ROI. They're proving ROI in a much different way. So if we, as an exhibit house, comes to the table, the discovery meeting table, and we have all of these preconceived notions all the time of, well, everyone else out there wants more leads, so you must as well, then we're not giving our clientele the fair chance to express why it is they're actually going. And a lot of
Mhm.
times we're asking these questions, and we're getting them to think, maybe for the first time, about why are we really doing this? Not just
Mhm.
because we've always done it, or Joe in the sales department said, I see a couple competitors at a show, we should go to that. That's not
Mhm.
a strategy.
Yeah.
Um,
And there was one of our guests who they were talking not just about ROI, but to your
mhm.
point, depending on what their goals are, because they might not be always about, leads or things being signed, that they should think about if it suits their needs, return on engagement. you know
Mm,
what what does that look like? Are they looking for visibility in their specific industry? What are they looking for? If it's not sales leads, just really help narrow down what those goals are, because a company like Blue Hive or our competitors, we can help hit those goals if we know what they are better. Um, so
yeah, exactly. And it was so Marlis Arnold was on a couple weeks ago, and she had some really great one-liners. Hope is not a strategy, right? It's like
mhm.
that kind of sums it up, right? We're banging the drum on strategic planning ahead of time. Um, and I think again, you'll as a designer feel free to kind of jump in, but building a beautiful booth also is not a strategy, right? That's we need the structure of the booth to be attractive, hopefully to be a wow factor to stop people to allow for functionality to happen within that space to create
Mhm.
room for engagement and creation of memorable situations.
Mhm.
But the booth is just building a pretty booth is not going to get it done either.
Right.
We've got to be
The
deeper than that.
the booth should the booth should, whether you wanna call it beautiful or slick or whatever the pretty adjective is, right? The booth should,
Hmm.
that's like a no-brainer. That's what it should be,
Yeah.
but it should also be so many other things that are more tangible, right? And what I mean
Right.
by that is, like, a good way to explain it is people like, "Oh, well, you know, the designer's gonna come up with something." They may be dipping into, like, some of their art brain, right? But
Mm.
they're not coming up with something as an artist, like, that's just what they want it to be, like, they're just expressing themselves. They're
Yeah.
almost invisible in the solution, right? They're just using their, I say just like it's a small thing. They're using their expertise and talent and knowledge, right? And everything that they've been exposed to come up with something that's very specific. And it's
Mm.
not just to make sure it tells the story of who that company is and what they do, but what they can provide that specific audience. Because from show to show, the audiences can change. It's going to need to be within budget. If it is a complex program,
Mhm.
which are some of my favorite. I love it when clients like, well, we don't need a booth, we need booths. We have a 60 by 80 that also needs to work as a 50 by 50, and it needs to work as a
Yep.
20 by 20, and we want our 10 by 20 to look like it has continuity and make sense. But by
Yeah.
the way, some of the 60 by 80 shows that we go to, the audience changes. So we need to change our messaging, or we need to change the engagement, because the doctors are going to interact with it differently than the nurses. Like, that's all strategy. So when a designer is
Yeah.
saying to you, this is what I've come up with, they should also be able to tell you why, right? And they're trying to be in budget, which is
Yep.
extremely hard these days. So they
Yes.
might they might say to you, "Well, this is what I can get in budget. I know these are a couple of things that you wanted that would push it over budget. So, I'm
Right.
going to show you the rendering maybe without it too, so you can decide what you want to do, because they're trying to be, respectful, but they also
Yep.
want to push things forward for you, right? They don't want
Right.
you to look um, like their company isn't on the cusp of their own technology or
Right.
services, right?
You gotta your brand statement needs to fit who you are.
Yeah.
And I think we see it both ways, right? Sometimes we see these billion-dollar corporations showing up like, "You guys look like you put this together in your garage. Like, what are you what are you doing here?"
Yeah.
Or
Like,
it's an
let us help
opportunity
you.
for small for small
Yeah.
companies to show up and look big.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, right.
And designers, they're also, you got to remember, they're taking in consideration maybe what the client likes. And on the client side, there might be more than one stakeholder, right? There may be the decision maker, the trade
Yeah,
show marketer. There could be multiple levels if it's a big global program. They're taken into maybe an agency or multiple agencies. Of course,
yep.
their account executive internally, like the Chris Dunns of the world, might be like, what'd be nice, Dana? As I take that in
Just way too
consideration
many Chris
too.
Dunns. Yeah.
Right. If it's a good idea, we'll, absolutely take in consideration.
Yeah.
So the designer's never like, oh, it would be great, based upon like an art thing. It's design. It's where design and art like become business and
Yeah.
strategy. So
Yeah.
the exhibits are very specific. It's like the three-dimensional version of a brand and a story.
Absolutely. All right. What's next?
Okay, so there were some episodes that really emphasize on the follow up is the ROI, but
Yeah.
like, let's talk about, like, at attribution challenges, lead drop off, and solutions when it comes to those.
Yeah, I don't have to go back very far at all. I have pages of notes and oh, by the way, we've had a couple of different co-hosts along the way. So Brendan Hamlin of Hamlin Creative sat in the co-host seat last week, and we interviewed a woman by the name of Kayla Drake, and she is just like a field marker extraordinaire. She dropped so much, so many great ideas and so much gold with how really the playbook of how that should be done. And she talked about, that handoff post-show handoff. The show's over. Everybody pat yourself on the back. It was great. Glass of champagne, celebrate. All right, now the work begins again, right? So that handoff to the sales team isn't just like, hey, here's a spreadsheet with a bunch of names in it. Good luck on my job. Here is the event person, or the field marketer is Dunn. She works with them very specifically. So even before she'll hand the lead sheet off, she's going to go through. Her team goes through. They vet it out. Who are our ICPs? Are these leads real? Is there a specific need? Is it hot? Is it cool? Is it warm? Where does it fall in along the way? And that way, when they're handing this off, there's multi layers, multi levels. To draw an analogy, when we talk to a new exhibitor or a potential new client about their show schedule, we talk about a hierarchy of events. A level, B level, C level, 1, 2, 3, however you want to break it down, but there certain events are more important. On the flip side, same type of thing with leads, right? There's hot leads that need to be addressed right away. Maybe there's a conversation that happened between a certain rep at the show and they are ready to go, right? Hey, listen, we're launching RFP next week. We want you guys on it, or we have some specific needs. We already discussed these in depth on the show floor. I'm looking to start this off, but I don't need to start at step 1. I've already done step 1. I've already done step 3. And then there's other stuff that's, you need to put people into a drip campaign because they're just not ready, but you have to retain that top of mind. So it was just kind of a masterclass on, how that is done, that post-show follow through, making sure that the salespeople are set up for success, making sure that if they were on site, they were ready, they were trained, they were ready, they asked the right questions, they showed up good to go. If they weren't on site, because maybe just either schedules wouldn't allow it, or maybe their personality type is really great with follow through, but face to face they're not as strong. So she talked a little bit about choosing building the right team to take to the show as well, which is great. And again, these are things that were echoed throughout many different episodes. That one happens to be super fresh because it was just last week.
Yeah. Follow up. Follow up, I think, it's complex, and it's one of the most important parts of the whole reason for going and having those exhibits. So,
Yeah.
anything, and you can talk to your trade show provider for ideas with that, to really have, you don't just think of your show, the exhibit, like those, whether it's 3
Yeah.
days or 4 days or whatever. Think of it as the pre-show, the during show, and the post show, right? So
Right.
it's got a full
Those
life cycle. Yeah.
three different pillars. Just
Yep.
to kind of add to that, because I was thinking in some of our earlier episodes, we had back to back, we had Tyson Vassapoli, who works for Blue Hive, and we had Brendan Hamlin, who was a guest on the show and then was so good as a guest, we brought him back as a guest host. But Tyson's our digital strategist. He creates content for us, whether it be video or interactive, whatnot. On Brendan's side, he runs a creative agency that specializes in film and content creation around live events. And I'm thinking, the messaging that came out of both of those events, although from slightly different lenses, was so similar. It's like, plan ahead, build a strategy, build kind of an idea of what we're going to capture on site, because that is a once in a lifetime opportunity to capture that content, and then be able to use it, quick edit, shoot it out on social that same day or the night of, or whatever the case. But then some really good ideas came from that. Was, how do we use the content we've created as a post-show follow-up strategy as well? Maybe it's a video of that actual person in the booth space. Like, hey, remember you were in our space, you did that goofy engagement, where you were whacking a mole or whatnot. You were putting on the funny hat that tied into the story of what we were telling. Here's either a picture or a small snippet of a video of you, Mr. Potential Customer. Talk about making or creating a memorable connection, right? It's not like if you're an attendee at a show, you might visit 40 or 50 booths, and then you go home and a couple of days later you start getting inundated with stuff, and you're just like, I don't really remember. Everything's a mush, a mashup of all of the different things that I visited. But if the exhibitor can go to that prospect with a specific, do recall when you were in the booth and the smell of the fresh baked cookies were getting everybody all riled up, and we did that interactive game where you learned about XYZ, like that. was such a memorable piece that we experienced on site. And then I'm going to parlay that opportunity into the post-show follow-up. Like,
Mhm. Yeah,
that makes
and
you stand out head and shoulders
And
above.
Blue Hive, we do exhibits, we do events, we do lobby installations, we all
Mm,
sorts of things. But if you think of the exhibit itself as also an event, right? There are some
yeah.
clients who will have a live speaker, in their theater, and it's set up for certain times. They'll already have scheduled meetings inside their exhibit, but there are other things that you can do inside your exhibit that you can use beyond that 3-day show, right? And we've talked about how a lot of the digital content you might create for that show, if it's on a screen, and I'm not talking about the proprietary things that really, those are separate, but things that are more like the big moving graphics, or if there's something specific that was created to tell a story about your new product, that can be
Mm,
used in other elements of marketing and other platforms. But you could also like interview clients at the exhibit. You could take clips of things happening in the exhibit and not only use those as social media, but then share them with more of your clients who maybe weren't able to go to the show, or potential clients who weren't able to go to the show. So now your
right.
show is living on beyond when that show slash event happened, right?
Right.
um, and then you can it's just a great opportunity to get more content and really add fire and longevity to the stories that you're trying to tell about why you're a company you want your customers would want to work with,
Yeah.
right?
So
um,
just
Go
to,
ahead.
if I could kind of put a bow on that, or at least add to it. Obviously, it's super expensive to do shows. It's very expensive to do them well. It's even more expensive to do them poorly. So everybody wants the ROI. What's my return on investment? And when you have a content creation strategy that allows you to create that evergreen content and use it for post show follow through, to use it for sales trainings, or to use it as cold outreach, to warm things up for, as you had just mentioned, to reaching out to other clients who maybe weren't at the event. Hey, here's some things I learned at the IMTS show, or promote the next show. Right, I've got this
Hmm.
great content that I've built. We were at an event. It might not be the same event, but like, hey, come see us. We had an awesome time at XYZ show. We did this. Just wait and see what we're going to do at the next event. It's going to be even better.
Hmm.
So your dollar cost average on the benefits that you're getting from that event are driven downward, because I'm able to take these efforts that we've already made. We've already spent that money. Now I'm going to leverage them forward, and receive a whole bunch of benefits.
Yeah. And your exhibit partner can help you leverage ideas for that, from it could be a podcast on show site. I mean, it's really endless. It really
Yeah,
all depends on what your message is and who your specific audience is, and your exhibit partner will be able to brainstorm and come up with ideas of how to leverage that time and those dollars spent. Yeah.
yeah, and that's, I mean, when I sit in, you know, the discovery meetings with Dana or the other design team, those are questions that they're asking right from the get go.
Hmm.
Who the audience, to understand the persona, like who are we talking to? It's so important, and it's an easy thing to skip over, but
Hmm.
it's a good thing to focus on.
Yep. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going
Okay.
to ask you to talk a little bit about some feature stories where some marketers are really still killing it with these small and mid-sized budgets, like what they're able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's, and this is specific but not specific. One of our recent guests, Marissa Naboski, who was also a Boston-based event person, she talked about, and I'll tie this in a little bit to what you mentioned earlier when you have a complex project. And she talked about the benefits of, don't identify one event. Look at your entire year. Look at the show schedule. How does it map out? What are all the sizes that I'm going to need? And you know, uh, build a plan around accomplishing all of those events. And again, not to try to boil the whole ocean per se, but have the foresight to understand that my biggest booth is a 40/50. And I've got several that are going to factor down from there. I got some 20/30s, 20/20s, and a bunch of linears, or whatever the case is. You identify what's my workhorse, right? What's the booth that's going to go out more often than any other booth. And when you are able to invest on the front end and buy more things that fit and have modularity and have flexibility built into them, then when you dollar cost average out over the entire year, you're way ahead of the game because you made, maybe it's a large capital investment on the front end, or you've done some other things to kind of move some monies around, but you're able to kind of pull that in and accomplish a lot of goals. So instead of every time you're looking at an event, you're like, well, it's in Chicago, I'm going to go rent from a Chicago exhibit house, and you're going to drop $100,000. Versus, if you have a little bit more strategic play on the front end, you choose, a vendor that just works for you because that they're a good fit. Their locations are working for you, whatever the case may be, and you spend 300 with them, but then you get to do all those other shows, and all there is just operational costs and not like rental costs and production of graphics over and over again. So I thought that was pretty neat. And to kind of play off that just a little bit, this is really our own story, but I know we're not fully unique in doing so. We have a client, Red Zone Software, and when we designed their first booth 3 years ago, one of our great designers, Finn Yonkers, who's on Dana's team, had foresight, and we were building a 20 by 20, but we knew at some point we're going to need a 40 by 40 or something larger. And we actually designed and built booth structure that looked similar, very similar to some of our rental inventory. And I'm not talking about just like a blocky counter, like really cool cabinets that have, a space in between with lighting underneath. They had some interesting attributes, but we built structure and we built assets that had a super similar flavor to our own rental, so that when they got to a point where they were ready to grow, we could take our rental inventory and plug it into their needs and help them expand and not miss a beat. It looked like their booth. It looked like everything was custom built for them, but they had the ability to kind of grow and then shrink back down to just using their own stuff. And they didn't have to buy all those extra things for a 40 by 40 that's once every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a really interesting, just kind of a well thought out strategic play.
Mm-hmm.
We aim to do that on the regular basis. This one happened to just map out to really be a good illustration of that particular type of strategy.
Yeah, custom modular are one of my favorites to work on, like
Yeah.
as a design brain,
Mhm.
because it's super challenging. Um, but I love being able to say to a client, okay, if this is your largest configuration, this is all the stuff you own, and when you go to your smaller configurations, you're just taking stuff away, right? You don't have to build anything new unless you want to change out your graphics from show to show,
Yeah.
because it really shows that we're looking out for their best interests. We're making it worthwhile for the stuff for them to own, and they'll be pay storage on that, so we got to make it worth it for them,
Right.
and be smart about it. And like, we'll always run blocker on the client, being protective of the client's dollars like they're our own personal bank account. If
Yeah.
someone says, we have a 20 by 20 for 6 shows and 1 show a year, we want to spread those pieces out in a 40 by 40, it's a really big show, but we want to
Yeah.
buy a deck. You're going to either hear the designer or the account manager, that's your very common core team, say
Yep.
to you, how often do you plan on using that deck? And if you say, well,
Right.
just for that 1 show a year, they're likely going to say to you, you can buy it if you want to, but we'd recommend that you rent it, because if it's just for
Right.
1 show, it's not going to be worth your dollars.
Right.
And it's also a very sustainable thing too. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful
We're
structure
using
you
something that
use,
already
someone else
exists.
is
Yeah.
using, you don't have to pay storage on it. So yeah, I love trying to figure those complex programs out instead of
Yeah.
just the
You know,
one-off.
the other thing I want to kind of shine a light in a slightly different direction as well. So when you're managing your budget, it's, and we mentioned this to start, right? It's not just about your exhibit; it's about the activation that you create within, or the experience that you're creating within. So we had a couple guests that stand out in my mind, that had some interesting takes on that. First one was Adam Centimore, and he has a company where he does wine, chocolate, and cheese tastings. Super niche, super specific, but think about, like, I don't have to build anything to create a space in my booth to create an experience, a memorable experience that engages all the senses, smell and touch and taste. So he talked about the value of creating those memorable experiences, whether it be an event, whether it be in a booth space or whatnot. And the other one that kind of stands out was John Seelig. He's a tech sales guy and a comedian and a stand-up guy, and he's merged those two things together. And conversing with him and chatting with him, it's really interesting to kind of see how all of that stuff, sales, some of the best salespeople are just great ad libbers. They're great stand-up comedian per se, right? So John does a couple of different things in his business model. He will work with teams to kind of help them to write humorous anecdotes that are great icebreaker openers, to start you off, so he can train your team to do that. But he'd also be present in your booth and kind of use some of that humor, in order to kind of engage and get people talking, right? So when you think about how do we take a budget and deliver the best bang for the buck, it's not always about, again, building architecture. Sometimes it's about the absence of architecture, leaving the space for that live engagement, that live interaction that can happen in the space, and moving the needle in that fashion. I know that when I first had gotten into exhibits back 30 years ago, like everybody had live presenters. That was the thing. So there was people up on a stage. Maybe they were magicians, maybe they were comedians, maybe they were just live presenters. But I think with technology, we've kind of gotten away from that to some extent, and we've had some really specific conversations. Another one that comes to mind with Jim Panagas, about going back, the pendulum swinging back the other way. We're also just overloaded with everything digital and AI, and nothing's real anymore. And like, I want freaking real people, and I want to shake hands and give hugs and engage with real people. So let's do that on the show floor. Let's bring real people back to the show floor to have those engaging conversations.
Yeah. And that I love that you brought up engagement because, of course, that's right in my wheelhouse. That's where my brain lives, right?
Yeah.
So, if you think of your exhibit as a stage, it's a
Mhm.
shell which has a lot of jobs to do that shell, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's custom module, a lot of programs, has to be in budget, it has to, be a place where your products or your services can be seen. Maybe they need to be touched. People need to understand them. The engagement part of that storytelling is how
Mhm.
people remember and learn. They're educated, and if you can entertain them while they're being educated, that's the most important part about that. Um,
Right.
and so when you're thinking about your exhibit, I always say, like, don't have your exhibit like contingent upon what your interactivity is, because that might change next
Yeah.
year at that same show, or might change from show to show.
Right.
So, but when thinking about what that engagement is, just make sure it has something very strongly tied into either the story you're telling about either your company or your product or your service, or the theme for that show. Like, make sure the
Right.
engagement makes sense. And if it's technology, make sure you're not using technology just for the sake of something shiny, right? There's
Yeah.
so many different types of technology that absolutely use one, but make sure it's the right one, right?
Yeah.
Get different ideas from your provider. Is it something hands-on and tactile? I personally love those because you're engaging more senses. It could be something that does both. It could be technology with something hands-on with technology. So there's no wrong answer. And every year that goes by, we have more and more ideas and options. And a company, you asked me what makes Blue Hive different. We don't have all our eggs in one basket as far as the different industries that we serve. So we're able to say, if we're serving the pharmaceutical, because we have a blue med division, if we're serving pharmaceutical clients, things that we do and learn from that audience, we might then like cross pollinate into our tech audience, like clients going to Black Hat or RSA, or the manufacturing audience going, IMTS. So we're always taking the excellent pieces of nuggets from different industries and putting
Yeah.
them into each other, so they're never like existing in silos. So we're able to do that in a really beautiful, intelligent way for them.
Awesome. We're getting some props from Sylvia. Yes, edutainment is the key. I always tell my student members that exhibitor booth is more like a stage than a
Yeah.
mini store or office. Absolutely, right? It's a performance, to some extent. Um, meant to be seen from a distance. The As you mentioned, the booth has many jobs. One of which is to try to get people to stop and engage, and then it's up to your folks who are working that space,
Yep.
to kind of take over. I know it really wasn't part of the questioning, but as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of several times we talked about doing a good job training your staff, and that seems to be an area that that a lot of folks are lacking on. I think it goes back to we've got 50% of the industry is new again, right? So not
Mhm.
everybody has been doing this forever. Sometimes, I'll paint with a broad brush. I've been doing it for 30 years. I probably show up and maybe don't. And there's been cases where I maybe haven't done enough research as I should, because I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time. I know the drill. But what I also need to remember is that the buying has changed. My audience has changed. The bulk of the market right now is millennial and Gen Z. Um, I'm a Gen X guy, right? So the way that I did things 25, 30 years ago is different than the way people want to experience things now. We need to meet buyers where they are, right? We need to create a journey that they want to go on. So if we build it for us and our grandparents, the younger generations aren't going to want to participate in that same journey.
Mhm. Correct. All right, I'm going to ask you from some of our other sessions, can you name a few things that we've talked about that are present day challenges, um, such as like tighter budget and things like that, and what were
Mm.
some of the pieces of information that came out of those topics?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, that's come up multiple times. I'm thinking of a recent episode with Jessica Sabila of the exhibitor advocate. So, not that this is an answer per se, but her organization is, I think, really one of the only nonprofit organizations within the trade show exhibit world or industry that gives exhibitors a voice. She said the number one problem, by and large, across the board, is pricing. And it's not the ability to understand the always fluctuating and very difficult to decipher pricing. It's the pricing from the start. Um, Exhibitors are being priced out of the market. They can no longer afford to go out and do shows. And again, I think it's primarily, maybe it's on the for smaller exhibitors, smaller companies perhaps, but even large enterprise organizations that have multi-million dollar exhibit, budgets per year, they have to rethink things because costs have gone up, right? So budgeting is a concern. How do we kind of address that? We do it in a few different ways. Again, we kind of sit down with our exhibitors. We are partners, with them. And I think doing a show schedule review on the front end as early as possible is super important, right? Well, let's look at everything that you're going to. Asking them, what's A level show? What's B level? What's C level? Are there things that might drop off of this list because budgeting is challenging, or because maybe your budget's flat from last year? They're asking you to do the same amount of shows, but that across the board, costs are up, right? I don't know exactly what the percentage is on show services, but since COVID, I know it's up 30 to 40%, maybe even more in some cities. So that just makes it really difficult to substantiate that spend. So if that's the case, we can do a couple different things. Do you want to do more small shows, or do you want to do fewer large shows? And I don't know that one is right and one is wrong. It really kind of comes back to what are the goals for the company. As an exhibit company that likes to see a really well done exhibit, we're hoping for the latter, right? Like, let's maybe take some of the smaller events that didn't really do much for you and take that budget, put it towards doing a better job with not necessarily a larger booth, but putting more budget towards something that's really going to be impactful, leave the impression, with your ideal, customers, and give you something to kind of really put a flag in the ground and build off of. Because as we mentioned, you can leverage the investments into that show in a number of different ways.
Hmm.
I'm reminded, as I'm saying that, of your ability to let's talk content creation on site. um, Knowing that we're going to check some boxes, maybe social media. We're going to check some boxes from the PR team. We're going to check some boxes from new product development. Maybe we check some boxes uh, with the advertising or marketing group, because we're going to create content that can be used in all of those different areas. So, do they have some budget in their buckets that they can put towards me, my show, and the content that I'm going to create? Allow me to bolster my budget here, produce something better, bring in the real deal team from Hamlin Creative or whatever, whoever your partner is per se, and create really epic stuff that you can leverage, going forward. So that's a different way to maybe find more money within your company, by repurposing and just allocating, dipping into other people's budgets, because what you're going to create, checks a lot of boxes across the board,
Mhm.
which is nice. So it's getting the most out of your shows. Taking a closer look at the events you're doing, being more strategic and tactical. There's the word I'm looking for. And not just doing a show because, oh, we've already done the show. Let's see how it goes. The data's everywhere. Look at the data. If it's not working, then make a change.
Yeah. And I would say, thinking from the creative side, I would
Mm,
echo absolutely try to determine what you can do at that show or with the content that show, right? In other ways, other environments, online. Is it you're interviewing one of your own sales staff, really kind of giving someone a live
mm,
demo of the
yeah,
product, and that can be shown, social media sent around. Like, there's so many different ways that the content can be repurposed. So every time you use that content again, like whatever it cost you to make it originally, it's almost like it goes down because you've used it so many
yeah.
times, right?
Your cost per dollar cost averaging just takes it
Yeah.
down to next
Um,
to nothing.
um, what was I gonna say? I'm losing my train of thought. Hmm.
I
I
actually
lost my it's
wanted
gone.
to that no problem. We really, one of the things we haven't talked that much about is pre-show promotion.
Yep.
And we had several guests on who not only mentioned it but had some specific thoughts and ideas. I'm actually going to grab a piece of mail here. Neil Rogers is with Rogers Marketing Group, and he talked about sending lumpy mail. So this is a package that I got from another guest, Club Ichi, Liz Lathan. Thank you, Liz. Inside here is a small rubber chicken. It's going to be a little hard to see, but there he is right there. So it's quirky and it's goofy and it makes for lumpy mail, right? So something that's out of the ordinary. It's not an email that gets stuck in your box. It's an actual physical piece that you've sent to somebody. Is it a hat? Is it a piece of swag? Is it a piece of a puzzle that I have to go to the booth to plug into the rest of the puzzle such that everything is making sense, right?
Mhm.
So there's that one thing. Another episode that we had that was really great was with Jen O'Hara, and she is with Bella Box, and she creates these amazing, total, artisan crafted gifts. So the idea of a well thought out strategic gifting strategy, whether it's something that you're putting together and mailing out ahead of the show to attract people and get them to come to the show, or you create some pieces that you actually have at the show. You've custom curated them. Maybe the prospect has to come in to claim it, or maybe it's something that's been built specifically for a customer. Comes in, they win a competition, edutainment, as Sylvia had mentioned, and then they're able to walk away with a really cool piece. So Dana, you were the architect of a very similar thing that we did for ourselves at the Exhibitor Live show. We were in San Antonio, and being kind of in the Southwest, cowboy hats and so forth is kind of the norm in that city. And you had these really lovely, amazing, well-crafted hats that had a little bit of a blue hive flavor with hexagon, honeycomb and flowers and so forth. So you had these custom-made hats, and then folks who came and participated in our event were able to leave with that. So that wasn't so
Yeah.
much a pre-show promotion, but we used what we were doing in the booth to reach out to clients ahead of time, potential clients and clients ahead of time, let them know what we're going to be doing, and create enough interest to make sure that we're on the short list of people you're going to stop and see at the
Yeah.
show.
And there's something we said, we've talked to people about giveaways and gifts, and those were proper gifts. It wasn't Blue Hive branded on the exterior. So
Right.
it's like they were high quality, and proper
Yeah.
branded. And at that show we were doing something, a little different because it was a show for people in the trade show industry, and we're always pushing the envelope a bit as it's our job to do. And we did that with what our interactivities were. But what I was going to bring up before, and then you even reminded me when you were showing the lumpy mailer, which I love that term,
Yeah.
is, to if clients, I would always suggest to not fear doing something different, like take
Yeah.
creative risk, and especially like you don't have to wait till you feel like Our return, we didn't have as many people stop at the booth that we thought, but there were a lot of people at the show. Like, why weren't they stopping at our exhibit? You don't
Mm,
have to wait till you're in that spot before you feel brave enough to do something really different creatively. Because I would especially say, especially with the so many different generations now, it is very normal for people to see things that are unusual. So you almost have to be unusual to be noticed,
right.
and I don't mean crazy weird. I mean just show up as your brand. Like, don't break your brand, but don't be afraid to push it, how you show
Right.
up and what your interactivity is. Um, because in order to get people's not only their attention, but I don't mean at first, but like their attention to come in and like
Yeah.
park it there for a while and really listen to you so that they then go, "Oh my God, I need to be doing business with you. I get you. I see what you're doing. Like, you are smart for me." Right.
Yeah.
Um, you have to kind of like maybe evoke a little bit sense of their curiosity, like poke their curiosity, right? Maybe create a moment of wonder. Those are little elements and slivers in humans' lives that in one hand, we're surrounded by a din and noise of everything. And on the other hand, we don't get a lot of those authentic moments of curiosity and wonder. So talk to your exhibit provider about that. Say, hey, how do we say and do all this, but also really, surprise people? Like, we want to be not afraid. You might be surprised with how that works out for you.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great, great comments. So I think here we are at 51 minutes.
Yeah.
We're going to need to wrap up the
Yep.
toolbox today.
Wrap it
We
up.
get so much to talk about. We could probably do a whole nother episode and hit on all the other things and talk about some of the folks who were here with great episodes and left us with great ideas who we didn't even get to talk about yet today.
Hmm. So,
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say at the end of every toolbox, we ask our guests typically for three kind of takeaways. So we're going to bounce this back and forth off of each other. But Dana, I'd like to ask you, what is one of your key takeaways or suggestions for the folks out there who are in the realm, they're exhibitors, they're maybe wondering how to move the needle, how to do something different, or how to help themselves.
Um, I would say on the client side, if I could talk to all clients, right? I would say
And you
don't be
can through this
don't
medium right here.
right. Yeah, I'm sure they're all listening.
They're all
Um,
here.
I would say don't be afraid to be different and stand out on the show hall floor. Um,
Mhm.
Definitely communicate with your trade show partner, you know, all the things, their whole program, right? Try
Right.
not to treat your booths as one-offs. You'll get more bang for your buck if you treat it as a program. I think those are some of the most important things. And whatever is important for your company, whether it's sustainability or you have a complex program with a lot of different configurations of sizes, communicate all of that to your partner, including the designer. Make sure the designer knows all that because designers are used to getting a long list of things that it needs to achieve. And if
Yeah.
we know them up front, we can, if we can't hit all of them, we can hit an awful lot of them. And
Yeah.
everything that we're able to achieve strategically is going to be a better use of your dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. One other thing, and feel free to kind of piggyback on this, but I have already mentioned one of our guests, Jessica Sabila, and she's with the Exhibitor Advocate, and this is a group. So if you are on the exhibitor side and you do shows, reach out, find her, just Google the company. They're a nonprofit, and it's free to join, and they are becoming the voice. They are the voice of for exhibitors, right? So they're the ones that can help you go to the Freemans and the GESs and say, listen, what's happening here is not sustainable. We cannot
Hmm.
continue to pay more and more and more for the same thing. I shipped a crate from, Boston to San Francisco, and it cost me, you know, $2,000 to get one crate from here to there. And it cost me $5,000 to get it from the dock to the booth and back. Like,
Hmm.
how is this working, right? So that's one of the things that I'd like to add in for those three takeaways is that if you're an exhibitor, make sure and reach out, find the exhibitor advocate online, sign up, become a member, work with them,
Yeah.
and amplify all of our voices together, because we're not going to fix anything if all we're doing is just complaining into a chasm of nothingness, right? Like
Yeah.
our voices have to be heard. And yes, things cost more money now than they used to. That is a fact of life. But how do we collectively kind of pull our resources together to kind of make sure that this industry that we love and the benefits that we get from trade shows is a sustainable thing?
hmm And I'm just going to chime in on that. So I'm a big fan of the exhibitor advocate. And from the design side, I'm always, cautious with clients' dollars, right?
Yep.
And even if I'm cautious on my side, we have no control of the shipping and the drayage and things that are costing on show site for services.
Right.
So that is something like we could complain all day long to the show organizer or the venue. It's not going to matter. It's only going to matter if it comes from the exhibitors themselves because they are the
Yep.
end client for those shows. Or if I'm like, look, our hands are always tied because rules and regulations, not the safety ones, but the other rules and regulations are getting so severe that you're really tying exhibitors down with what they're able to do in that space and take
Yeah.
advantage of like full cubic content and have a grandiose exhibit. Again, they're not going to listen to us, they're going to listen to their clients. So I highly advocate that uh, trade show managers become members of exhibitor advocate as well, support them, be in contact with them. um, and I just can't speak highly enough about that organization. I really appreciate everything they're trying to do for the industry.
Great.
um, then you had also asked me before we hopped on the call if I were to give any advice to newer people in the industry, what would it
Yes.
be? So, I would
Please
say,
share.
okay, if you're newer to the industry, if you're on the trade show and event manager, like you're on the client side, I would
Hmm.
absolutely recommend that you attend Exhibitor Live. It usually happens in like February or March. It
Hmm.
is a great show. They have sessions that are educational. They have sessions if you're trying to earn your CTSM, your Certified Trade Show Marketer, so you can earn credits towards that. The show itself, we call it like a trade show for trade show people. So you'd see people like Blue Hive there, because we're a trade show provider. But there are other things there as well that are resources for you to really help make sure that your program is successful as possible. The other event I would have you go to would be Event Marketers Summit. Um, and I want to say, I think that was back in May, I think. But it's similar but different. It still attracts a lot of trade show and event marketers, but it also attracts like maybe a little more agency side of clients. Again, they showcase a ton of new information for you. They also have sessions. And this both of those shows are a wealth of knowledge to stay up to date with everything that's at your disposal so that um, your efforts are successful, and on the cusp of everything pushing forward. And also,
Mm.
I would follow both those organizations online. And they both have online magazines with new information. You can follow them on social media channels as well. Um, if you're in the industry, like on the trade show side, like Chris and I are, I would still recommend going to both of those shows. But if, say, you've been in the industry for a little bit and you're like, I want to get a little more involved in the industry, I would recommend looking up EDPA at edpa.com. It's the Experiential Designers and Producers Association. They have chapters all over the country, and you could go to some of the chapter events. The pillars that are important to EDPA, it's a nonprofit that basically is here. It's all of us competitors who we put down our swords and we join together and we get together for um, protecting the future of the industry, finding future leaders in our industry, future workforce in our industry, which is very important. We do deeds of good, which essentially, if someone's been stricken with an illness or what have you, we'll have fundraisers. And also the EDPA Foundation does a lot of stuff with scholarship. So I would go to EDPA and look up their chapters and see how you can go to some of those events. If you start going
Mm.
to some of those events, you're like, this is pretty awesome. I really want to get involved and I really want to stay a part of this industry. Become part of a chapter, find out who's in charge of each chapter and become a member. Um, the EDPA also has committees. If there's something you feel passionate about, there's education, there's sustainability, future workforce, future leaders, there's all sorts of things. You could become a dedicated member of one of the committees. there's also the EDPA Board of Directors, which I'm on, as well as Chris Griffin, the current president. And I have learned a ton. I mean, I didn't start out there. I was already, on the committees and chapters, and eventually, voted into the Board of Directors. But as a professional who's been committed to this industry, I've learned a lot because I'm sitting on a board with these high-level professionals and owners from our competitors, and we're not talking about things that we shouldn't, like we're giving any secret sauce of each other, but like I've learned so much as a professional, and it changed my way of thinking, beyond what I do at my desk, right? So it helps me be a better professional if I understand what people at other desks are doing, finance and just all that sorts of thing. And um, like I said, I'm a continuous improvement and education person, so it helps feed part of that brain for me. But I've learned so much. I feel extremely like I'm a lot of gratitude that I'm able to be exposed to that.
Yeah.
And
Gives you a different lens instead of just being kind of
absolutely
in your own little tunnel vision,
right.
like you said, at your desk. I could
Yeah,
see I could see the big picture.
yeah, yeah,
And I get a sense of, there's a whole industry out there, like billions and billions of dollars move through this industry that we're involved in.
yeah,
Up until late, no one knew who we were,
yeah,
when
yeah,
COVID hit. Um, EDPA was part of the charge, leading the charge, going
yeah.
to the government saying that
They did.
this is actually a large group of people.
Yeah,
We're
they just did their most recent legislative
Yeah,
action day down in Washington D.C. And if that's something again that calls to
yeah,
you, you can reach out on the website and say, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more about that." And I'm just telling you, like, as someone who started off in this industry thinking about design, and I wanted to be really good at that because I
yeah,
wanted to understand a client, right? And then as I was a designer for a long time, I wanted to understand what other people in the company was doing because I figured I'd be a better designer if I not only understood what the client needed, but what other departments needed. And then I began a show site, and I'm like, oh, I'm a better designer now because I can understand what labor needs on show site and what's going to slow down something being installed. And then I'm like, well,
yeah.
now I understand how our company works. I understand how other companies work. Now I understand how the industry works. Like all of that is such valuable information when you're looking at something from someone else's perspective that you just become a better at your job and
Mhm.
better rounded human. So if you want to get involved with any of those things, just to feed your own brain and also participate in the industry, those are some things that I would recommend. Also, if you're newer to the industry, follow ECN, that's Exhibit City News online. They have online social media and newsletters, trade show news network. And then there's a lot of international ones. Like I kind of go on forever. Those are the highlight ones, but yeah.
Good stuff. Hey, listen, this is our longest episode ever. So good, bad, or indifferent. We had a lot to say. We've got 23 episodes in the can, and we're going to have some great guests on throughout the summer into the fall.
Oh,
We've
we have
booked,
some really good guests coming up.
yeah, we got
Like,
some
I
great
kind of feel like
folks.
more ha 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 ha, like some really good. I'm like this
Well,
close to telling you, but I can't.
no, you
Oh, so
can't just
close.
tease it. Just
Nope,
tease it. So,
nope.
you
I
can
don't
watch
jinx it.
this very broadcast here, which currently is live, but will be wrapping up in a hot second, and it's
Hmm.
available forever and ever here on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and we're on all of the podcast platforms as well. So this has been a super episode. We had a lot to say. We didn't get to all of it, but I really hope that if you were live, and I know there's several folks that were in the chat, we didn't get to all the questions. But appreciate your participation. Hopefully there's some great takeaways. And then, hey, we're just getting started, right? We're halfway through the year. We're committed to rolling out great guests and great conversations on a weekly basis for this community of like-minded event people. Tell your friends, your coworkers, your associates, share what we're doing here, and hopefully we'll keep on adding value to everybody out there in the industry. Boom. All right. Thanks,
Thank you,
Dana. This
everybody.
has been a fun conversation. Really appreciate you. And we'll wrap it up. And everybody have a great rest of your